The Grand Assembly Hall of the Intergalactic Alliance was a place that could make even the proudest leader feel small. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds of silver mist drifted beneath its lights. Columns made of living crystal glowed, softly, changing colors with the mood of the chamber. The air carried the scent of strange flowers from the Arusha homeworld, mixing with the sharper tang of metallic ozone from the VOR. Here, dozens of species came together, tall, short, scaled, furred, feathered, and some so alien that they looked more like drifting clouds of light than solid beings. Their voices rose and fell in different languages, blending into a constant hum. At the far end of the hall, under the wide star window that showed a blue and gold nebula beyond, stood Captain Mara Vance of the Terran fleet. She wore a black human uniform, plain, without jewels or glowing armor, but she stood straight, her gaze steady. She felt every glance directed at her, and she knew what they were thinking. Humans had joined the Alliance only 7 years ago. Compared to civilizations that had stood for thousands of years, humanity was young. To them, Earth was just a developing world, lucky enough to survive long enough to be noticed. In the eyes of most of the Council, humans were fragile, weak. Councillor Kaivesh, of the Vorth, stepped forward. His tall, insect-like body gleamed under the lights, his black eyes reflecting the nebula. His mandibles clicked sharply as he spoke. Human vessels are untested in major engagements. The threat we face is no place for experiments. Mara didn't let his words sting, though they were meant to. She answered calmly, her voice carrying through the hall. With respect, Counselor, the threat we face doesn't care what species we are. The holographic display at the center of the room shifted, revealing a sight that made the hall grow quiet. A dark wave filled the projection, a roiling mass of black and violet energy that rolled across star maps, devouring everything in its path. Worlds vanished in hours. Ships disappeared without even sending a distress signal. Admiral Sharath of the Zalari floated closer to the display. His body was long and eel-like, covered in sleek silver scales that shimmered under the light. He spoke in a low, echoing tone. It is no mere storm. It adapts. It learns. It grows. The moment our ships engage, it changes. It will reach the edge of Alliance space within days. The murmurs started again. Fear, doubt, calculations. Some whispered of evacuating whole sectors. Others argued about building stronger defenses. But no one suggested an actual attack. Mara stepped closer to the holomap. She studied the moving wave as if it were a puzzle. Her jaw tightened, then stopped debating. She said, her voice hard, "Let us fight it." Laughter, short, sharp, came from somewhere among the delegates. A deep-voiced Juric elder spoke without looking at her. "Fight? With what? Your ships are small. Your fleets are scattered. You have no weapons strong enough." Her eyes flashed. "Small ships are fast. Scattered fleets can be everywhere at once. And as for weapons, we've made a career of fighting with less than we need." That drew silence. They had all read the reports on humans, a history of wars, disasters, and near-extinction events, yet every time, somehow, they came back stronger. Only one voice spoke in her favor, Commander Yolan Taro of the Arusha. His tall, feathered form was elegant, his voice carrying a soft, musical tone. "Perhaps, the youngest race sees something we do not. Sometimes, fresh eyes see the path the old ones overlooked." Kaidesh made a low, irritated clicking noise. Or perhaps they are too inexperienced to understand the scale of what they face. Mara didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed on the wave. It wasn't random. It moved like a living thing, curling and twisting toward populated systems. She could almost feel its hunger. Inside. She thought of Earth, of her mother's voice telling her stories about storms back home, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods. "We've seen storms before," her mother would say. "The trick isn't to stop them. The trick is to survive them until they're gone." Mara straightened. Humanity may be new here, she said, her tone calm but unyielding. But we are not strangers to hopeless battles. If you give us the chance, we'll find a way to win. The council chamber fell into a heavy pause. High above, the star window framed the silent nebula. Beyond it, somewhere in the dark, the wave was coming. Mara knew they didn't believe in her. Not yet, but that didn't matter. Belief was something you earned after you proved yourself, and when the time came, she intended to prove humanity. In a way the Alliance would never forget. She walked out of the hall without waiting for permission, the sound of alien whispers following her. Each step felt like the start of something larger, something dangerous, and unstoppable. Out in the docking bay, she stopped beside the hull of her ship, the Argus. The crew was already boarding humans, all faces set with quiet determination. They didn't need speeches. They had their orders. As she climbed aboard, Mara allowed herself one final glance back toward the nebula. Somewhere beyond it, the storm was already moving, and humanity was moving to **, the first human scout ship. To meet the dark wave was the Calypso. It had been stationed at Listening Post Epsilon, a lonely outpost on the edge of Alliance space. At 4:17 station time, the Calypso sent a standard data pulse weather patterns, ship logs, nothing unusual. At 4:19, a strange distortion appeared on its long-range scan. At 4:20, its transmission cut off mid-sentence. By 4:22, the listening post itself went silent. Inside the Silver Spire, the Alliance's flagship, the war room exploded into noise. Alien officers shouted in their languages. Screens filled with static, and the giant holomap shifted to show an expanding sphere of interference. Admiral Shireth, his silver-scaled body coiling nervously, raised his voice over the chaos. We have lost all signals from 6 sectors. Gravitic relays, quantum channels, even tight beam laser links. Everything blocked. Counselor Kythish's mandibles snapped in frustration. Without communications, our fleets will fight. Blind. The wave will cut us apart before we can even coordinate. Around the table, panic began to creep into the faces of the commanders. No one had seen a weapon like this before. Without signals, the Alliance's massive fleets might as well have been ships scattered in the dark. Unable to warn each other of danger, Captain Mara Vance stood at the far side of the table, silent. She watched the static on the comms display. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward. Not all of us fight with comms. The room went still. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward her. The words sounded almost absurd in this place. The Alliance had built its strategies on perfect, instant communication for centuries. Kathesh's voice dripped with disbelief. Explain, human. Mara tapped the console beside her. A schematic appeared in the air, a small narrow ship, barely more than an engine with a cockpit. No shield generators, no high-control cores, no stealth fields. These, she said, are Terran runners, courier ships. They don't rely on relays or encryption. They carry their messages physically, from one fleet to another. No signal, no transmission, just a pilot and a sealed data core. A ripple of confusion moved through the aliens. The Arusha commander, Yalan Taro, tilted his feathered head. You would send messages by hand, in combat zones. Yes, Mara said without hesitation. Because you can block every signal in the galaxy, but you can't block a determined pilot in a fast ship with a map. The Vorth counselor hissed. That is ancient, inefficient. You will lose too many ships. Mara's eyes hardened. Maybe, but we'll lose everything if we sit here and wait. Humans survived for centuries before instant comes. We can do it again, and so can you, if you stop depending on machines for every thought. Her words hung in the air. It was a challenge, but also a truth the others didn't want to admit. The Alliance had grown comfortable, maybe too comfortable, in its technology. Admiral Sharath's voice was slow, reluctant. You Have pilots willing to do this? Mara didn't even look back toward the docking bay. They're already in their ships. 30 minutes later, the Silver Spire's observation deck was filled with alien officers watching a sight many of them didn't understand, one after another. Small, unarmored human runners launched from the bay. Their engines burned bright against the darkness, no shields to hide them. Each carried only two things: a sealed message core with orders for the nearest fleet, and a pilot who had been told the risks. Some of the alien commanders whispered to each other in disbelief. No one in the Alliance would have asked someone to risk their life just to deliver words. Commander. Yalan stood beside Mara. His feathers shimmered in the blue glow of the deck lights. You are not afraid they will fail? He asked quietly. Mara kept her eyes on the streaks of light vanishing into hyperspace. Of course I'm afraid. But fear doesn't stop the work. And you don't need every runner to make it. Just enough. The first runner, Calcine Wraith 1, broke into real space. Near Fleet Group Delta 2 hours later. The pilot, Ensign Tasha Kiran, had flown through 3 close brushes with the wave's strange tendrils twisting, curling energy streams that seemed to sense her presence. She dodged each one by instinct, her hands gripping the controls so tight her knuckles ached when she docked. Her first words to the fleet commander were simple. Captain Vance says, "Move now, or you're dead." Her voice carried urgency, but also something else, the human tone that made other species pause. It was the sound of someone who had. The Argus hung in the silent black, far beyond the edge of Alliance territory. Inside, Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the star map hovering above the main console. A red halo pulsed slowly in one corner, the advancing edge of the dark wave. It was moving like a living thing, flowing between stars, curling toward inhabited systems. Speed? She asked quietly. Lieutenant Wren, a young comms officer with dark hair pulled back, answered without looking up. Estimate: 30,000 clicks per minute, Captain, and it's adjusting course. It knows where the biggest fleet is. Mara's jaw tightened. They had learned in the last 48 hours that the wave was more than just energy. It was intelligent, or at least controlled by something intelligent. It anticipated fleet positions. It predicted escape routes. If they let it keep adapting, it would crush the Alliance one fleet at a time. She turned toward the hollow of the wave, her mind already racing. We can't outrun it. We have to make it come to us, on our terms. In the war room of the Silver Spire, Admiral Shirath stared at Mara's plan as it appeared on the central display. Counselor Kathesh's mandibles snapped in disbelief. You want to bait it? Deliberately attract a wave to a location? That is madness. It's the only way, Mara replied calmly. Right now, it's chasing our fleets one by one. If we can lure it into a controlled zone, we can hit it with everything at once. Concentrated fire, all species together. Yalan Taro, the Arusha commander, studied the plan more closely. And this controlled zone is an asteroid belt. Yes, Mara said. The Karthos belt. Dense rock clusters, high metal content. It will block some of its energy surges, slow its advance. And we can rig the asteroids with explosives, enough to create a shockwave that might disrupt it. Admiral Shirath flicked his tendrils. You do not know if explosives will work. No, Mara admitted. But I know doing nothing won't. Preparation began immediately. Human runners darted between fleets again, carrying the orders. Alliance ships converged on the Karthos belt, scattering among the rocks like hunters, setting a trap. The Argus was assigned the most dangerous job, to act as bait. Mara's crew would have to get close enough to the wave to make it chase them, then lead it straight into the belt. Hours later, the Argus floated on the edge of real space, sensors locked on the advancing wave. Contact in 20 minutes, Wren said, his voice quieter than usual. The crew moved with precision, checking weapon calibrations, adjusting shields, running final system checks. No one spoke about the fact that they might not make it back. Mara moved down the bridge, pausing at each station. She met each crew member's eyes, not with speeches, but with a steady, silent look that said, "I trust you." The helm, Lieutenant. Kira Holt adjusted the throttle, fingers ready. "When it gets here," she said, "do you want fast or faster?" Mara almost smiled. Fast enough to make it angry. When the wave appeared, it didn't arrive quietly. Sensors lit up with warnings as space itself seemed to twist. A black-violet horizon spilled across the stars, swallowing their light. It rolled toward them, tendrils of energy snaking out like searching fingers. "Lock weapons," Mara ordered. "Fire when ready." The Argus unleashed a barrage, plasma torpedoes, kinetic rounds, and high-intensity beams. The shots struck the wave and vanished into its darkness, leaving no visible effect. But the tendrils turned toward the Argus, like eyes finding prey. "It's following," Ren said, voice tense. "Good," Mara replied. "Holt, take us in." The chase began. The Argus weaved between asteroid fragments and debris fields, keeping just ahead of the wave. Its engines roared, the hull shuddering under the stress. Energy tendrils lashed behind them, some missing by meters. One grazed the port shields, sending a shiver through the ship's frame. Inside the Carthos belt, dozens of Alliance ships waited in silence, hidden behind massive asteroids rigged with explosives. "Target entering belt," Ren reported over. "Comes to the fleet." The Argus started past the first trigger point. The wave followed, its vast form pushing between the rocks. Asteroids cracked and tumbled as it brushed against them, its tendrils burning lines across their surfaces. "Now," Mara said into her comm. Across the belt, charges detonated in a chain reaction. Asteroids shattered into massive clouds of metal and stone, slamming into the wave's front. The shock waves rippled through space. Alliance ships emerged from hiding, weapons firing in perfect unison. Streams of plasma, ion bursts, and railgun slugs hammered into the dark mass. For the first time, the wave faltered. "It's slowing," shouted Ren. Mara's heart pounded. "Keep firing, push it back." But then, the wave changed. Its surface rippled like water. New tendrils burst out, faster and sharper. They struck at the nearest Alliance ships, wrapping around them. In seconds, 2 vessels were pulled into the darkness and vanished. "It's adapting again," Jalen's voice came. Through comes from his ship. Mara clenched her fists. The trap had hurt it, but not enough to stop it. "We're not done," she said. "Argus, full power. We're taking the last shot." The Argus dove toward the heart of the wave, weaving between tendrils, ignoring the alarms screaming from every console. They dropped their remaining charges directly into the wave's core, then pulled away at maximum burn. The blast lit up the belt in a storm of white fire. For a moment, the wave shuddered violently, its form breaking apart, but only for a moment. Then it began to reform. On the bridge, silence fell. The trap had worked, but the enemy was still alive. Mara stood at the viewport, watching it writhe in the distance. "It can be hurt," she said quietly. "Now we just have to learn how to kill it." The Carthos belt was silent now, where moments ago the space between its asteroids had been alive with plasma fire and detonations. Now only drifting debris remained. Shattered rocks spun slowly, glinting in the light of the nearby star. Broken hulls tumbled among them, some still burning, some already dark and cold. The Alliance fleet had survived, but barely. On the bridge of the Argus, the crew moved in grim silence. The battle hadn't been a victory, only a delay. The dark wave was still out there, slowly pulling back into the void, reforming its vast shape. Lieutenant Ren's voice was quiet as he scanned the damage reports. 17 ships lost, hundreds of lives. Mara stood at the center console, her hands resting on the edge. She didn't look away from the tactical display, and we bought ourselves, 6 hours? Kira Holt at the helm muttered. 6 hours is still better than none. In the war room of the Silver Spire, the surviving commanders gathered again. The air was heavy with tension. Counselor Kaivash slammed one clawed hand against the table. We threw our strongest fleets at it. We detonated enough explosives to tear a moon apart. And it still lives. Yalon Taro's feathers drooped in frustration. It does more than live, it learns. Our weapons will be less effective next time. Admiral Shirath spoke with controlled calm, though his tendrils curled in worry. We need a new plan before it adapts again. Kaidesh's gaze turned to Mara. Do you have another ancient human trick for this, Captain? Perhaps you will suggest throwing rocks at it next. Mara didn't flinch. Not rocks, but maybe something older than weapons. The room went still. Later, aboard the Argus, Mara gathered her senior crew in the briefing room. She tapped a key and the holodisplay lit up with an enhanced recording from the battle. What you're about to hear isn't in the official reports, she said. The video showed the Argus making its run toward the wave's core. As the ship drew close, a strange sound emerged from the static, faint at first, almost like distorted interference, but the more they enhanced the audio, the clearer it became. It was a voice, not a single voice, but thousands, layered together, speaking in a rhythm like a chant. Words, in no language any of them recognized. It was deep, resonant, almost painful to hear. Kira Holt frowned. That's not just noise, it's coordinated, like it's talking. Ren swallowed hard. Or warning us. Mara nodded. Whatever it is, it means this thing isn't just a natural phenomenon. It's intelligent, maybe even alive. The revelation spread quickly among the human crew, but the official Alliance Council wasn't convinced. In their eyes, the sound was just random energy distortion. That night, as the Argus drifted in low power mode to avoid detection, Mara stood alone in the observation deck. The wave was far off, just a dark smear on the edge of visible space. Yolan Taro's voice came from behind her. You think the others are wrong. She didn't turn. I think they're afraid of what it means if I'm right. If this thing can think, then it can plan. And if it can plan, it can be reasoned with. Yolan finished. Mara shook her head slowly. No, if it's killing this many without talking, it doesn't want peace. But maybe we can learn its rules. Every predator has one. The Argus was ordered to continue shadowing the wave from a distance. The crew rotated into shifts, watching the strange tendrils curl and uncoil, as though searching for something. On the third day, they caught another sound. This time, it wasn't during an attack. The wave was simply moving through empty space. The audio filters picked up a steady pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Then, faintly, the layered voices returned. But this time, Ren noticed something. There's a pattern. Every 12 seconds, the sequence repeats. It's not random. Holt leaned forward over the console. Could be coordinates. Mara stared at the waveform. Or a message. Something it's broadcasting to someone else. The thought made the room go. The Argus drifted at the edge of the storm's influence, its engines on silent mode. Beyond the viewport, the dark wave moved slowly, like an ocean current in deep space. Its surface rippled and shifted, tendrils curling outward in all directions. On the bridge, the crew was silent. Every time they looked at the thing, it felt less like watching a storm and more like being watched by one. Mara stood with her hands behind her back, studying the latest readings. The repeating pulse they detected, the strange 12-second rhythm, was still there. Whispering across the scanners like a heartbeat, Holt broke the silence. Captain, if that's a message, maybe we should try answering. Ren turned sharply toward her. Answering to that? We don't even know what it is. Holt's jaw tightened. We do know one thing. It's smart. And if it's smart, maybe we can figure out how it thinks. Mara's eyes stayed on the display. I've been thinking the same thing. An hour later, The engineering bay was filled with the hum of activity. The plan was simple, or as simple as sending a message to an alien force of unknown origin could be. They would broadcast on a low-energy analog signal, using the same repeating 12-second interval the wave had been sending. No alliance, encryption, no complex code, just a basic human audio pattern. 3 short tones, 3 long tones, 3 short tones. An old Earth distress call, SOS. Ren shook his head as they prepared the transmitter. Captain, if this thing understands us, it might see that as weakness, Mara replied quietly, or it might see it as language. Either way, we need to know. The bridge was dimmed as they began the broadcast. Outside, the wave rolled on, seemingly unaware of their presence. Signal sent, Holt reported, repeating every 12 seconds. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Ren muttered under his breath, maybe it can't even hear us then. The sensors flared red. The wave had stopped. Completely. Its entire vast body hung in the void, unmoving. The tendrils shifted, turning toward the Argus. Mara's voice was calm but firm. Hold position. No weapons. The darkness moved. It didn't rush forward or strike. It simply began to expand, unfolding like the petals of some impossible flower. As it did, the repeating pulse in their scanners vanished. Holt's hands hovered over the controls. Captain, we've lost the heartbeat signal. A moment later, the bridge speakers crackled. A sound pushed through, low at first, then growing louder. It was the voice again. Thousands of voices, speaking at once. Only this time, it wasn't random. The same pattern they'd sent, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, came back to them, but stretched, warped, as if the voices were trying to shape the tones into something alive. Then came a sound none of them expected. A single word, not in human language, not in any known alien tongue, but clear. The translation system couldn't define it, yet the meaning pressed into their minds all the same. Found. The crew froze. Ren's voice was tight. Did it just say? Yes, Mara said. Her heartbeat had quickened, but her voice stayed even. It knows we're here. The voices returned, louder now, overlapping in strange harmonies. This time, the translation system caught fragments. Many, long, waited, return home. Hunger. Holt's knuckles whitened on the controls. Captain, I think it's moving again. The wave surged forward, but not toward them. It swept past, its tendrils brushing dangerously close to the Argus's shields. As it moved, the voices faded, replaced by the steady heartbeat signal again. Mara exhaled slowly. It's going somewhere. Follow it, but stay at extreme range. They trailed the wave for hours, deeper into uncharted space. Finally, it slowed again, coming to a stop above a small, dead planet. From orbit, they could see the surface was cracked and dry, with strange circular patterns carved into its crust. As they watched, the wave lowered tendrils toward the largest circle. Then the ground opened. A column of light shot upward, and small glowing objects began to rise into the wave, just like on the moon they'd seen before. The feeding had begun again. Ren's voice was almost a whisper. Captain, what if these planets aren't random? What if it's following a route? Mara's eyes narrowed. Then it's not just feeding, it's harvesting. Holt looked up from her console, which means it has a destination. Back aboard the Silver Spire, Mara delivered her report to the council. Some still doubted the meaning of the contact, but the recording of the single word, found, had silenced much of their skepticism. Jalen Taro's feathers shifted in thought. If it is following a route, perhaps that route can be predicted. Mara nodded. We find its next stop before it gets there, and we hit it when it's feeding. That's when it's slow, and that's when it's vulnerable. Kavesh clicked his mandibles in reluctant agreement. And if you're wrong, Mara met his eyes, then we'll be the last thing it ever finds. The meeting ended with no clear answer. But in Mara's mind, the decision was already made. She stood at the Argus's viewport later that night, watching the stars drift by. Somewhere out there, the dark wave was moving toward its next meal, and for the first time, she had a way to get ahead of it. But the thought that lingered, the one she couldn't shake, was not about strategy. It was the sound of that voice, deep and ancient, whispering a word that felt less like a threat and more like a promise. Found, asterisk. The Argus drifted silently through empty space. Captain Mara Vance stood at the observation deck, her eyes tracing the faint shimmer of distant stars. The dark wave had vanished from sight, leaving only a faint energy trail behind. Ren was at the console, scanning the trail's pattern. Captain, it's moving in straight lines now. The feeding isn't random. It's following coordinates, jumping from system to system like a map. Mara's lips pressed together. Then we can predict the next stop. Plot it. Holt's fingers flew across the controls. By my calculations, the next system is a small alliance colony on Zarin Prime. Sparse population, unarmed defenses, perfect bait. Mara nodded. Good. We don't just follow it, we lead it. Time to set the trap. Back aboard the Silver Spire, Mara met with the council again. The room was tense. Few had survived the last encounter without fear, and many doubted the humans' approach. Counselor Kaivesh' mandibles clicked sharply. Another trap. After what happened at Karthos, you risk everything again. And what if you miscalculate? Mara's gaze did not waver. Then we die trying. But if we succeed, we stop it before it reaches another populated world. Yelantaro of the Arusha leaned forward, feathers glinting in the lights. We'll support you. All fleets will converge on the coordinates, hiding until your signal triggers the attack. Mara allowed herself a short nod. Thank you, Commander. That cooperation could be the difference between life and extinction. The Argus and its runners sped toward Zarin Prime, weaving through asteroid fields to avoid detection. Each ship carried not only sensors but also explosives, capable of altering the landscape if the trap failed. The human crews worked in silence. Nerves tight, Mara moved among them, stopping to look each pilot in the eye. No speeches, no promises, just quiet confidence. Trust your instincts. We've survived worse than this. Stay sharp, and we'll all come back. Holt leaned over the navigation console. Captain, the pattern from the wave. The objects it's collecting. They're not random. Mara's brow furrowed. What do you mean? They're all technological artifacts. Machines of every kind. Even destroyed vessels, pulled from debris. It's gathering. Intelligence? A chill passed through the room. Mara's mind raced. If the wave was collecting technology, it wasn't just a predator. It was building something bigger. We need to be precise, she said. It isn't feeding for survival. It's learning. Hours later, they arrived in orbit above Zarin Prime. The colony below was small, scattered domes on a rocky plain, little more than research stations and farms, perfect for a trap. Mara gave her orders calmly. All fleets hide. The runners go in low, mimicking normal colony traffic. When the wave arrives, detonate our charges and attack in sync. Timing is everything. The human pilots nodded. They had done impossible things before, and this would be no different. Remember, Mara said softly, it may be intelligent, but it's not human. It doesn't understand fear. It reacts to patterns. That's our advantage. The wait was tense. Every officer on the Argus stared at the scanners, watching the black horizon. Then it appeared a ripple, distant and dark, moving toward the system. The wave was enormous, its tendrils twisting and stretching like serpents in slow motion. Mara's heart pounded as she watched it approach. Signaled the runners. She said begin decoy maneuvers. Ships slipped through the atmosphere, blending with normal colony traffic. The wave's tendrils reached for the surface, but the runner stayed just ahead, luring it into the trap. As the wave descended toward the planet, the human crew noticed something terrifying. The artifacts it collected weren't just random machines. They were tools designed for communication, navigation, and warfare. It wasn't feeding, it was constructing a network. Ren's voice trembled. "Captain, it's building something. A superstructure, maybe?" Mara's hands gripped the railing. "Then we have to stop it before it finishes." The explosives rigged in the surrounding valleys detonated in perfect sequence. Asteroids, rocks, and debris shot upward, striking the wave with force. Streams of plasma and energy from hidden Alliance ships hit in unison. For a moment, it faltered. Tendrils retracted, the surface wrinkled, and the Argus floated just beyond the outer rim of Zaran Prime's system, hidden in shadow. Below, the planet's surface was scarred from the previous battle. Valleys and canyons littered with shattered rock and twisted metal. Captain Mara Vance stood at the observation deck, staring into the darkness. The wave was coming, and this time, they were ready. Holt approached, her expression grim. "Captain, if this fails, we won't just lose ships. The colony below, it'll be gone." Mara didn't turn. "Then we make sure it doesn't fail. The wave has limits. We've seen them. We know how it reacts. This is our chance." The plan was simple on paper, impossible in practice. The Argus would act as bait again, but closer than ever. Human runners would guide the wave along. A narrow canyon, lined with hidden explosives and concentrated fleet fire. Every second had to be perfect. Mara walked among the pilots before the run. She stopped at Tasha Kieran, a young human who had survived the first run. "Tasha, you know what to do." Tasha's hands tightened on the controls. "Yes, Captain. I'll lead it exactly where you need it." "Good. Then trust your instincts. We've survived worse than this. We survive again." The wave appeared on scanners before it was visible to the naked eye, a black ripple against the stars. Its tendrils stretched outward, probing, sensing, learning. "Brace for turbulence," Ren warned. "It's faster this time." The Argus dove toward the canyon entrance, engines screaming in silent fury. The wave followed immediately, tendrils lashing outward, tearing through loose debris, seeking anything in its path. Mara's voice was calm, precise. "Hold formation. Runners, stay sharp. Wait for the signal. Timing is everything." The first charges detonated as the wave entered the canyon. Explosions sent rocks tumbling, some striking tendrils, some striking nothing at all. For a moment, the wave faltered, as if surprised. Holt shouted over the alarms. "It's reacting. It's reorganizing." "Yes," Mara said. "That's what we want. Make it overreach." The Argus pushed deeper into the canyon, deliberately provoking the wave to follow. Tendrils wrapped around the narrow walls, scraping shields, sparking fires along the hull. Alarms screamed. The human crew held steady. "Steady," Mara whispered to herself, though the words were for the crew as much as herself. The fleet lay in wait, hidden along the canyon ridges. Human runners flew ahead, placing charges in perfect sequence. The rest of the Alliance ships waited for Mara's signal. Seconds became minutes. The tension on the Argus was almost unbearable. Every officer, every pilot, felt the weight of the lives below, of the lives in the fleet, resting on their shoulders. Then Mara saw it, a flash on the scanners. Tendrils converging toward a cluster of charges too close to the canyon's core. "Signal," she ordered. Explosions ripped through the canyon. The wave shrieked, not a sound that humans could hear, but a vibration that rattled the whole. Chunks of debris slammed against it. Fleet weapons unleashed concentrated fire. For the first time, cracks appeared on the wave's surface. The collected artifacts, stolen from countless systems, tumbled free into space, but the wave retaliated with fury. Its tendrils lashed outward, striking ships and runners alike. 2 runners were lost, their cores exploding. Energy surged along the canyon walls, shaking the Argus violently. Mara gritted her teeth. Hold your ground. Focus fire on the exposed core. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. The wave faltered again and again, each time recovering, learning, adapting. The human pilots were exhausted, the fleet weary, and yet Mara refused to give up. She noticed a pattern. The wave's reaction was slower when it focused on absorbing the artifacts. Target the objects it collects, she shouted. Not the tendrils, the core. That's its weakness. The fleet responded. Plasma beams and missiles struck the core objects directly. Sparks erupted, and the wave shuddered violently, tendrils curling inward. For a moment, silence fell. The darkness seemed to pause. The wave's surface cracked, revealing the truth. It wasn't a natural force. It wasn't just a storm. It was a machine, an enormous construct of collected technology, stitched together by intelligence and hunger. And it was learning from everything it absorbed. Mara realized the final step. Halt. Runners, fire the last charges directly into the core. Now, the human pilots dove into the center of the wave's feeding zone, risking destruction. Explosions tore through the artifacts, ripping the construct apart from within. Tendrils writhed violently, then slowed, then froze. The Argus shook violently as the core collapsed. Energy cascaded outward, but the precise timing and pattern of attacks had contained the blast. The wave fragmented into pieces, scattering debris across the canyon and the nearby space. The silence afterward was absolute. Ren exhaled, voice trembling. Did we just do it? Mara stepped to the viewport, looking at the shattered remains. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she thought of every crew member, every human pilot who had risked themselves, every Alliance fleet that had held its nerve. Then she spoke, quietly, but with certainty. We did, because humans, we don't just react to danger, we understand it. We adapt. We take risks no one else will. And that is why we survive. The crew let her words sink in. Around them, the shattered pieces of the wave floated like stars. No longer a threat. Even the alien commanders who had doubted humanity were silent. They understood, finally, what Mara had been proving all along. Later, as the Argus and surviving ships regrouped, Mara watched the stars drift by. She knew the wave might return someday. Intelligence like that never truly dies. But humanity had faced it, had seen it, had survived against impossible odds. And in that moment, she allowed herself a small smile. Somewhere deep in the darkness, the remnants of the wave pulsed. And somewhere in that same darkness, humans had left a mark, a lesson the galaxy would not forget. Mara whispered softly, almost to herself. They can block every signal, but they can't block us. The Argus drifted through quiet space. The dark wave was gone, shattered and scattered, but the silence was heavier than any battle. Mara Vance stood at the observation deck, staring into the void, her hands gripping the railing. It had been days since the final strike, yet the memory of the tendrils, the shrieking energy, and the knowledge that the wave had been intelligent, lingered in every corner of her mind. Holt moved beside her. Captain, do you think it's truly finished? Mara shook her head slowly. I don't know. Forces like that, they don't just die. They adapt, they learn. But now we know something even they don't understand. Ren, at the console, leaned forward. What's that? Mara's gaze didn't leave the stars. Humans. Our strength isn't weapons or technology. It's everything we carry inside us. Courage, creativity, risk, intuition. That's how we survived this. Back on the Silver Spire, the Council gathered one last time. Alien commanders who had doubted humanity now regarded Mara with a mix of respect, and disbelief. Jalen. Taro's feathers shimmered with approval. You predicted its path. You set the traps. You calculated risk that none of us would dare. Cathish clicked his mandibles, still trying to conceal his astonishment. And yet, humans did not attack with brute force. You reasoned, adapted, and survived, even when all logic said you would fail. Mara met their eyes evenly. The wave reacted to patterns, to numbers, to movement. But humans improvise. That's why we outsmarted it. That's why we are still here. Meanwhile, the remnants of the wave drifted like dark islands among the stars. Something Mara had noticed during the attack surprised her. The broken fragments still pulsed faintly, as if carrying memory, but none of them reassembled. Holt studied the sensor readouts. Captain, these fragments are trying to communicate with each other, but they can't. Our timing, the way we attacked. We interrupted its system, not just its body. Mara nodded, a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. We didn't just destroy it. We outhawed it. Ren looked up, a faint smile forming. So, humans really do survive against odds everyone else thinks impossible. Mara's lips curved. Not just survive, Ren. We thrive. We turn impossible odds into opportunities. And that is something no wave, no army, no machine can predict. Days later, the Argus and the surviving alliance. Fleets regrouped. The galaxy slowly resumed its rhythm, wary but alive. Humanity's reputation had grown overnight, no longer just the upstarts of the alliance, but the species that had faced a predator older than stars and outsmarted it. Mara walked the decks of the Argus, speaking to crew members who had risked their lives. Tasha Kiran approached her. Captain, we did it. But it felt like the wave knew exactly what we'd do. Mara smiled softly. That's because it did, and we showed it something it could never predict. Humans don't follow rules. We create them, rewrite them, and sometimes, we even break them to survive. The crew shared quiet laughter, a moment of relief that felt as vital as air dot above them. The stars stretched infinitely. Mara's mind wandered to the future, knowing that somewhere, fragments of the wave pulsed in the dark. They could rebuild, adapt, maybe even return. But humanity had discovered its edge. Not firepower, not shields, not tactics alone, but intuition, courage, and unity. The galaxy's most advanced species could plan, compute, and react faster than humans, yet none could improvise with the unpredictable, emotional brilliance that defined them. Holt approached Mara one last time. Captain, the wave was blocked by our attack. But what about communication? What if it returns smarter, faster? Mara looked,